Hello everyone. Welcome. So this is so random. This is so random today. Uh, I actually recorded a video about what I'm about to show here. Hey, Abel. Hello. Welcome. So I've actually recorded what I'm about to show here today in this stream, but then it was like, the video is a little bit too long, and I might have questions. I don't know if I'm gonna have any questions, but then I'm like, let's just make a stream. So here we are. Hi, Agent RR. Hello, and we're gonna give about 5 minutes. Then we can start. So how everyone doing? I'm just gonna actually. Nice. It's gonna start storming here soon. I think this week or next week, and it's gonna rain for like a whole week. I'm gonna set up some link for test. That of course NgRX Slice Index toolkit and image. There we go. Yep, exactly. All right. Are you? Oops, not showing. Okay. How are you doing? And thank you everyone for tuning in. We're gonna start. All right. So today, we're gonna do a little refactoring to a TodoMVC application from using NgRX to using something called NgRX Slice. So the to do, this is the link to the NgRX, so ngrx.io. For you who don't know, NgRX is a state management library, probably one of the most popular ones for Angular. So go check them out. So that's NgRX. And the application that we're building, that we're using as the template for this refactoring section is this. It is called a TodoMVC Angular NgRX by GitHub user Bruno. And this repo has Angular 12, NgRX 12, has Cypress test and also has unit test with snapshot testing, which is super good if you want something as reference. So I'm using this repo as a template with a little tweaks. And what is TodoMVC? So TodoMVC is kind of like a classic, I guess, specification for you to test out different frameworks or different front-end technologies. So you can see right here examples. There are a bunch of different technologies that try to demo that technology using this TodoMVC specification. And if you want to read more about it, this is the link to the TodoMVC spec. It's TodoMVC.com. There's a guidelines to contribution if you want to contribute your framework or you contribute your example. There's the app specification, so you might want to read like what do you have to deliver for it to be a part of a TodoMVC. So it's all on here. It's a TodoMVC. It's a little bit more comprehensive than like a simple to-do tutorial that you saw or see in some like tutorials. This is a little bit more comprehensive. So that TodoMVC. Right, next, what are we refactoring to? We are refactoring to use NgRX Slice. So Slice is a concept from Redux Toolkit. So if I pull up Redux Toolkit, which is right here. So Redux Toolkit is basically target. The main target is React developers who use Redux as their state management. And Redux Toolkit is more like a modern way of integrate Redux in React applications. And they have a concept of slice. So your state, imagine your state is a cake. It is a whole cake, a layered cake, birthday cake, whatever you want to call it. And then you have multiple features, right? Different features like a product feature, checkout feature, all of that, authentication feature. And each of those features will be represented by a slice, a single slice of that state, of that global state. And on that slice, you have all the layers, which means you have actions, you have reducer, you have selectors, all in that slice. So that's the main the concept of slice is that you have a single slice that represents a single feature of your state. On that slice, you have actions, you have everything that interact with that slice or with that feature. So when you want to read more about it, go to Redux Toolkit. Probably there's like a usage guide or something. You can read about it with the slice syntax or the slice concept. So that's the slice. So for people who are coming from Redux Toolkit ecosystem and want to look for something similar in the Angular ecosystem, I created NgRX Slice, and this is the documentation site. You can go to it and learn more about it, what it does. Definitely inspired by that create slice or Redux Toolkit slice concept. And also, I want to thank a couple of people. A special shout out to Marco. Marco recently joined the NgRX team as one of the core team members, and his PR, create feature PR, was the main inspiration for this NgRX Slice. Tim for NgRX Immer, and Mark Erickson for the Redux Toolkit work. Now, mention about Immer. What is Immer? So Immer is a library that allows you to update an object or update something immutably, but using the mutable approach. What I mean by that is you can use, let's say when you want to push something to an array, if you want to do it immutable way, which kind of required by some of the state management that you need to return a new state, you need to return a new reference. So you cannot use push to push something into an array you have to do like a spread syntax. So you have to do something like array, and then you have like new item. You have to do something like this to push the new item onto this array and return the new array with the new item, right? So immer allows you to use mutable array method like push, and it will work in an immutable way. It's basically the produce method right here. We'll convert that into the immutable update. So it's immer, and Redux Toolkit Slice uses immer under the hood to simplify the reducer, to simplify that whole update state process. All right, so that's all the introduction that I can give you. Everything you need to know to get started. Yes, I'm gonna paste all the links later in the description. Or is there any specific link that you want to me to paste in chat now, because it's quite a lot. Let's close that email as well. All right, so and of course I have the app running here. You can see it is a TodoMVC. It has NgRX set up with the logger set up with the Redux dev tools, and the state has the router and the to-do slice. Okay, yeah, I'll post them. I paste them, all of them at the end. And now let's see if this works. So the to-do spec specify that you have to be able to add new to-do. So new to-do. You can toggle complete the to-do or toggle incomplete the to-do. You can filter by active state or completed state. You have to show the number of items left, and you need to be able to clear the completed items, and you'll be able to edit the item, and you'll be able to delete the item. So that's the specification, and you can see all the actions are dispatched here on the logger. So it's go through the NgRX to update the state, to drive the state of this UI. And now we're going to look at the code. So this is just an Angular 12 application created with the Angular CLI. I've already set up NgRX, all of these, with the ngadd command. So ngadd NgRX effects, ngadd NgRX entity, 5 times to add all 5 packages. And then in my module, that ngadd commands will set up like the store module for me, the effects module, store dev tools, and the store router. For the store module, the template, the TodoMVC app template that I'm using is using the router store. So I'm using this one here as well. So I set up the router property and using the router reducer from the router store. If you look at this router state right here, that router state is that's our reducer that we set up in the app module. So this property is property right here, and then there's a logger, meta reducer logger. So it just log all of these in case you don't have Redux DevTools installed. Next one is effects module. So we have some side effect, like we load the to-dos from the JSON file in access. So I have this right here. Next one, the dev tools. So all of these is set up for you when you run that ngadd command. Next, we have the router store with a custom serializer. So this custom serializer comes from the store directory, and all it does is basically just grab the activated route, the route is being activated, and try to grab the params out of it. So that it set the state with the params. So now if we go back to the application, you can see that this is a params on my URL all, and that's serializer. We serialize it and put it in the params filter all right here. And if I add something, I go to active, you see the route changed, and my router state will be updated to active. Same thing if I go to completed, this will be completed. So that's the router state serializer work. Next, it also has some router selectors. Basically, I just want to select that filter from a state. So basically, this one is state.router, state.params.filter. Right? So the state right here is our global state. And then on the global state, we will have that router. Right? If you look at the raw, the state is this whole object. Inside that, there's a router key. Inside the router, there's a state, params, filter. And that is what we try to grab here with this selector. So that the router selector, next we will have the route configuration. So the route configuration is just the path with the params filter. We'll just load the to-do module lazily. So the to-do is our feature. So to-do is going to be our feature state, which means that I have inside of my to-do module set up the store module for feature with the to-dos and the to-do reducer. So that to-do's names right there is this to-do state property key here. If I change this to to-do, that's what actually get changed to to-do. And of course, this will all get messed up. So that's to-do. Let's just go back to to-dos. All right, now effects, we have a single effect, not a single effect, but a to-dos effect with two effects. One is to load the to-dos. Again, you have to get the concept of NgRX before you, I guess, you watch the stream. I cannot just go and explain everything. So if basically the to-do, an effect, it will listen for actions, specific actions, or one action. You can listen for multiple actions to execute the same effect, or you can listen for one action to execute that effect. And here just saying, hey, when I dispatch low action, please call get to-dos. And if you success in getting the to-dos, please dispatch the low success action. So this is the effect. For the filter effect, just saying, hey, whenever I set the filter, please navigate to the correct route. So if my filter is show active, please navigate to active. If my filter is completed, please navigate to completed. And I say this effect will not dispatch anything. So that's the effects. Now the components and like the structure of the template follow the spec of the TodoMVC. So we look at the styles. It's actually using the TodoMVC template stylings. So you can just install TodoMVC common and TodoMVC app CSS to have those styles. And then these components will just have like all the ID, all of these classes specified in the TodoMVC specification. So for the components, like these four components, are just presentation of components, and they will receive, they will receive the state from the global store from this to-do component, from the top level to-do component. So all of these are just boilerplate template, and it takes in stuff from the global store. For the services, this service is just loading that JSON file and return the to-do model. And to-do model is very simple. It's just ID, text, creation date, and completed. All right. So component, model, services, pretty standard There's not really much to talk about them. But now we're gonna dive into the store. So for the current NgRX implementation has 5 files to implement that whole TodoMVC flow. And the first file is this actions. We're gonna have all these actions: add, load success, delete, toggle, update, clear, completed, set, filter, and I export all of these under a namespace to do actions. Effects, we talked about effects. There's also entities. This project uses entities to help with the to-do list, like CRUD on the to-do list, add new item, add new to-do, delete a to-do, update one to-do. So this project using the entity, NgRX entity right here. Excuse me, there's a reducer. So inside reducer, we have the to-do state, the inertial state, and we set up the to-do reducer with all the cases for the actions. So for like when add action happen, we want to add one to our entity. So the to-do entity adapter for this case help with all of these graph function. Like for the update, like updating immutably is kind of confusing. It's not easy to read. So you can use the entity to help with that. Same thing with all of these. Set all, remove one, remove many. Right. So this is just a standard reducer. Next we have selectors. So selectors, they grab the feature selector from the to-dos, grab these selectors from the entity, and derive or compute all of these selectors. Like I want all the to-dos, I want the total to-dos, I want the loading state, I want to select filter, I want the filtered to-dos. So I filter the to-dos by the route, has to-dos, or has completed to-dos, or the incomplete to-dos count. So all of that computed selectors will be exposed on this namespace to-do selectors. So that's 5 files to implement the whole TodoMVC flow. If we look at the to-do component, we have the select function from the global store, and these return observable. Then we use the async pipe on the template to read the state. And then on these action handler, we just dispatch actions. It's pretty standard, but I wouldn't say this is simple. It has some complexity to it. But now we're going to use the NgRX Slice to reduce the complexity. Not reduce the complexity, but I guess the overhead of these five files. So the first thing you want to do is to open up terminal. Let me go back to that. And run npm install. That's NgRX Slice, NgRX immer, and immer. So NgRX Slice depends on NgRX immer, and NgRX immer depends on immer. So we install that. All right, we have that installed. Now we just go ahead and create a file called slice.ts inside of the store of the to-do. So we're going to have export const, and we just say an empty object for now. We're going to call the create slice function from NgRX Slice. Create slice accept an object with 3 required arguments. The first one is the name. So I'm going to use name of to-do, actually, just to-do. This is the to-do slice. It needs the initial state, and so it needs the reducer. So the initial state, we're going to copy from the reducer file. So the 2 things, the state and the initial state, we're going to copy from the reducers. So right there, so now initial state is happy. Right, for reducers, what we want to do with the reducers, we're going to copy, not copy, but we're just going to copy all of these case reducers back to Outline and put it in a comment like that. So this is all the cases that the current reducer is handling, right? There's like an add, a load success, toggle. All of these actions needs to be handled. So we're going to do the same thing with reducers. So this reducer is an object where the key is the name of the case you want to handle. So here I want to handle the add case or add action. I would call this the first. I would call this property add, and this one can take in a function that's going to be called with the state and the action. So the action of this add case, look at the action files for add to do. It has a payload of text of type string. So I'm going to copy that. I'll go back to my slice. I'm going to use the payload action type, also from NgRX Slice. I'm going to provide that payload. And now my action can be the structure with the type with that text payload. Now I have the text. I have the current state. I'm going to copy this this code right here. I'm going to call state.data equals that. And of course, I'm going to have to import the adapter and my text. So that's it. You'll notice here that I don't return a new state, but I just assign what the add ones returns to my state. Basically, I mutate the state, and this works because of immer. Right? You can see that the type of my state is a draft slice state instead of the state itself. So now I can mutate the state, and immer will do the rest for me. All right, so this is add. I'm going to remove that add. Next, we're going to have load. Load is a little bit different than add. Load is what I call an async case reducer, because you have this load, you dispatch the load, and then the load action will be listened by the effect, and then the effect is going to dispatch the load success. So it's still low, but it's low trigger and then the load success. So for the load, you can pass in an object, and this object has 5 case reducers, and where the success case reducer is required. So it is a little bit opinionated in the way that when you have an async case reducer, the success case is required. You're going to have to handle the success case regardless. So for the success case, I have state action again. Now if I go back to the action files, look at my load success, my payload is the to-dos array. Go back to the slice, use my payload action, and pass in the payload. Now I can destructure this into to-dos. Right? I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to copy this. I say state.data will equals to do entity adapter set all. Pass in the to-dos. Also turn the loading back to false. Now I need the trigger. So for the trigger, I just need the state, and state.loading equal to true. Now I have my async case reducer with success and the trigger. That's the 2 case. Next we have the toggle. So I can just do toggle with again state, payload action. We're gonna fill out the payload later. For the toggle, we need the ID, which is the number. Grab the ID. So state.data equals to do entity adapter update 1. So we're toggling the completed state of a single to-do basically this right here. We're toggling that. So we're gonna update. We call it update one. What we're updating? We update this ID. What the changes? It's gonna be this. That. So it's saying from the current entities at this ID, please toggle to completed with the negate with this operator here. And then I have to pass in the state of data. So I'm happy, right? That's the toggle. Next I have delete. So we have delete, again state. I'm gonna copy this because it is the same. We need the ID for delete. We need state of data to do entities adapter. Remove one. Remove the ID. Oh, I think remove one because remove the ID and state of data. That. So that's delete. Next we have update. So update will be state action again. It's going to be payload action. We need the ID, right? We need the ID and we need the new text. I'm going to destructure this guy. Text ID. I'll have state of data equals to entity adapter update one, update by the ID, and for the changes, it's going to be text. Oops. Changes is going to be text, and then pass in the current state. That's update. All right. Next, we have clear completed. All right. And then this is just a state, and I would just copy this and say state of data equal to that. Right. So now we don't have any case that we need to handle. However, we have another action called set filter action. So create slice will actually generate the action based on your case reducers. So if you want the set filter to be generated, you're going to have it somehow in this reducers object. But because set filter does not get handled by the reducer, we can do set filter and use the new reducer from NgRX Slice and then provide the payload for it if it has a payload. So this one is reduce state, and then the payload will be filter, and it's going to be of type to do filter. Just like that. So that's no op, no operation, no op reducer. Basically, it does not change the state. It does not do anything to the state, but it's there so that we have access to the set filter, or the set filter will get generated. So now we set up this reducer. What we're getting back from this is an action, and now we'll rename this to do actions. We get the selectors, and we will get name and reducer. But then nothing with name and reducer. If we look at the to-do module, name and reducer is an object that we pass into the for feature, like that. So what we can do is we can just spread this and call this to-do feature, like that. Now let's just look at the to-do action. On the to-do action, we will have all the cases that we just wrote in the reducers object. So for add, you can call add as a function, and again, you have to pass in a payload because we're saying add is a payload action. So if we look, it requires you to pass in an object with a text. You have to pass in something here so that it's happy. What about load? Well, load is not a function, but load is an object with all 5 functions. But then we only handle the success and the trigger, so we can call the trigger, right? No payload, and we can call the success, and the success require payload of the to-dos array. So we can have to do something like this. And so that to-do action, and the to-do actions is generated from the reducers. Right? So you don't have to write off that create action yourself. But now moving on to the selectors, this one right here. So on the selectors, we have basically 3 things. What are these 3 things? We have the select data, we have select loading, and we have select to-do state. So select to-do state is equivalent to create feature state selector with to-do as the name. So that's the equivalent to the select to-do state. And what about select data? So select data is basically from the initial state. So create slice will based on your initial state to construct all the selectors from your initial state. So now I have data and loading. What if I have not data but data something? And then I have data something. Down here I will have select data something instead. Right. I'm going to put back data. So we have those 3 selectors available to us, but then our selectors is a little bit more complex. But I mean, you can always use create selector with all the selectors that is generated for you. So I'm going to just copy everything from selectors. I'll paste it here. Move back up a little bit. All right. So for select all to-dos, we need the select to-do state. We have that already. Like that. We have this, just like that. And select loading, we don't need select loading. We already have select loading, so we don't need it. Select filter, stay the same. Select filter to do, stay the same. Select has to do, select has completed to do, and select incomplete to do's count. They all stay the same. But in our to do selectors namespace, we don't need that. We don't need that. Instead, we're going to spread the generated selectors. Now, the to-do selectors, we basically have everything we need. So now that's our slice. That's our slice. Now we're gonna use these things. First thing, we're gonna go to to-do module. We're gonna replace this object with to-do feature from the slides. Right. Next, we go to effects. We're gonna remove this import of to-do actions. We're going to import the to-do action from slides and change all of these actions. So it's going to be load trigger. And then instead of a load success action, it's going to be load success. For set filter, we set filter. And that is the effect. Next thing is our to-do component. Now, go to the import. We're going to remove the to-do action from actions and to-do selectors from selectors, and re-import from slides. The filter, the selectors stay the same because we use the same name, but for the action, we're going to have to modify a little bit. So instead of load action, we will dispatch load trigger, and add action will be add. And in fact, I will remove the action out of this. And that's it. So now everything is imported from slides. Then go back to the application. We're going to try to see if it still works. So we can see that the load trigger and the load success works. Let's see if we can add new to do. Yes, another one. Right. We can toggle complete, we can filter, we can edit, we can delete, and we can clear completed. So everything still works. Everything still works. So now let's go back to our selectors. All right. Now our selectors, the to-do selector is not being used, so it's grayed out like this. So we can remove it. So I'm going to remove this one. All right, all of these gray out selectors, we can remove them. These gray out, all of these unused, remove them, unused, unused, done. So selector, we can remove these files. Next, we have reducers. So to do reducer, it's not being used. Remove. Initial state, it's not being used. To do state is not being used anymore. Remove, save. Reducers can be deleted. Next, we have actions. To do actions is not being used. So remove. So all of the action gone. Right, and save. Actions gone. So we remove a bunch of things, and our app still works. So things still work correctly. So that's our slice, right? Now, there's one more thing. Because the slice makes use of immer, which means that we can just use the array method to manage our to-do array or to-do list without having to depend on the entity. So let's just, I guess, remove the entity. So the first thing first is I'm going to change the state to to-dos, and this is a to-do array instead. Now my initial state is going to become an empty array. Okay. Now for the add to do, instead of using the entity, I can just do state.todos.push my new to do, just like that. So that add case. Now for success case, I can just do state.todos equal todos. So that's success. Trigger, nothing changed on the trigger. For toggle, it's going to be, so toggle is an update operation, which means we can just grab the to-do. So I can do state.todos.find to-do.id equals id. And if I check if there's a to-do, I will do to-do.completed equals to-do.completed. I could just do this. So I search for that to-do. If I find it, then I will toggle the completed state. So that toggle. Now for delete, instead of finding the to-do, we're going to find the to-do index. Right? And if this to-do index is not -1, which means we found it, then we're going to use state.todos.splice to-do index 1. So that's delete right there. For update, it's going to be the same thing as toggle. So that, but instead of completed, we're going to assign the text to the text. That's the update. For clear completed is a filtering. And if you read the immer documentation, filtering items, you can just return the filter. It's easier. So what we can do, we'll be saying state.todos equals state.todos filter to-do.completed and negated. So basically we're saying I want all the to-dos that is not completed. So clear out decomplete it for me. So that's our slice. Now let's fix the selectors. Select all to-dos. We don't need that anymore. And for select total to-dos, we're gonna grab the select to-dos, and this is gonna give us the to-dos. We're gonna check for to-do dot length. So basically, we grab the length of our to-dos array, get the total. So now these are unused, so we can remove it. And select all to-dos. It would just be selector dot select to-dos. Okay, that gives us the to-do array. Same thing here. It's just selector dot select to-dos. All right. Now select all to-dos gone, and everything is happy. Right. So now let's go back to our application. We remove the entity from our slice and see if everything still works. So we add a new to-do, remove entity, and everything still works. We can update, we can edit, we can toggle completed, we can clear complete, we can delete. So now the entities can be removed. And that's it. That's our slides now. Right. Without all that entities, without all the actions, selectors, selectors is still basically there, but you get the select to-dos generated for you. You get the select loading generated for you. And all of these computed selectors, you still have to have it. You can have your own selector file for this one, and it just works. So everything is inside of this slice. So everywhere you want to use the to-do state, you will import it from the slice, the to-do slice, just like this one. So that's the refactoring from NgRX, to use NgRX Slice. And you remove all of the files that you don't really need. Yep. Right. I mean, any question? I think I kind of go fast, but it's just that easy to migrate from NgRX to NgRX Slice. And the NgRX Slice, super helpful if you want to put together a quick proof of concept of anything, because it's simple to set up. It's just a great slice, and it will return you this action, selectors, and the feature, the reducer, that you can use in your module, just like that. And you can use in your component, like that. And also your action type has that namespace as well. And it is based on this name right here. So if it changes to to-dos, that will become to-dos. Is that plural? So if we remove that, it will become to-do. So you can change that. You can change how you want the action type to be generated. There's a function called slice action name getter that you can pass in with the feature name and the action name. You can do something like feature name and then action name instead. So now your action name will become that instead of the square bracket. So it's really up to you. You can modify that. You can filter, set filter, just like that. So you can pass in the slice action name getter. or you can pass in some extra reducer. So extra reducer is reducer from outside of this slice, but can update the state of this slice. So that's extra reducers. The extra reducers will not have action generated for them. And that is NgRX Slice. All right. I mean, if we don't have any questions, I'm gonna stop the stream in 5 minutes, and that's pretty much it. This is basically here on YouTube, so you can rewatch. And let me put on a link on in the comments. So yeah, so there's TodoMVC. There's the repo that I'm basing on. This is the repo of the refactor, NgRX.io, yes, NgRX Slice, yes, Redux Toolkit, and Immer. Remove before flight. What needs to be done? And I have active that. So if there's no question, I'm gonna stop the stream. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I know this was random. It was a pretty random stream. I'm kind of using StreamYard or live stream YouTube to have my video on YouTube. That's pretty much it. So I'll see you guys around, and thank you.